Dear Reddit, what is the greatest animated movie ever made? Not saying it's the greatest, but my personal favorite is Wall-E. The first half of the movie is so silent, it could have flopped hard. It was a big risk from Pixar here, but it turned out to be a wonderful and magical movie. One of my favorites as well. It was a great example of showing the story and not telling the story. Agree, but it worth that risk. Point one of my favorite also. I freaking loved Wall-E. Wall-E is cool. It's so pure in heart. Wall-E is my favorite movie ever made. It was so good. That end scene is a real tearjerker. The dancing scene also makes me tear up because it's just so beautiful. It's not just Wall-E and Eve, it's also the captain learning about Earth and realizing that he's been missing out on so much. It's one of the most perfect moments, and it gets me every time. If not, it's at least the best Pixar movie in my opinion. Making the audience care and get emotionally invested into robots that don't talk is incredibly difficult to do, and they nail it. Not just those two robots. Every robot in that film has a unique personality that makes them interesting. It has to be Wall-E. Half of the movie is silent, and yet you know exactly what is being said. Especially the first half hour with no talking. Absolutely amazing. I loved him. The first half of the movie is so silent, it could have flopped hard. It was a big risk from Pixar here, but it turned out to be a wonderful and magical movie. One of my favorites as well. When I catch the flu, I watch Wall-E every time. I know the first half of it word for word. Wall-E isn't my favorite, but it is the best. That not might make sense, but to me, that's how I feel. It's such a good movie. All my homies love Wall-E and Eva. The Incredibles or Spirited Away. Spirited Away is amazing. The Incredibles was the top. Syndrome is one of my favorite villains ever to this day. I also liked Your Name. A Silent Voice. Haven't seen that one. I don't watch anime, but that shit nearly brought me to tears, which is not an easy feat. Highly recommend. Grave of the Fireflies. Give that one a shot. What about Barefoot Gen? Nearly. What? Are you a rock? I cried like a mountain lion in mating season. You will cry. Came here to say this one as well. I wish I could watch it for the first time again. I should rewatch this. I watched it during a flight, but I'm petrified of flying, so I didn't take it in at all. That shit had me crying. Garden of Words in 5 centimeters per second. That one was beautiful. I recently watched this. It was beautiful. It was good, and maybe I'm not the target demographic for it, but there were a lot of parts where I honestly didn't understand what happening, or why people were doing what they were doing. And I watch a ton of anime, so it's not like I'm not familiar with the bullying storyline or a Japanese mindset. Some parts seem to go on for a long time. It's like, I can appreciate it, but I felt like there were some clumsy parts that could have been ironed out. Some things I knew were going to happen, and it made me anxious and frustrated waiting for a character to figure it out. It's been a while since I watched it the one time, but I still think it had the potential to be better. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. For me, this is the perfect animated film with heartwarming moments, comedy, sadness, and just the right touch of romance. And the animation style is brilliant. Absolutely adore it. Honesty question. I haven't seen it yet, but when I see clips from it the frame rate looks low and kind of stuttering. Is that an artistic take? It kind of bugs me, but I bet if I watched the movie I'd get used to it. Really interested in your opinion on that. I've asked this 3 times before on Reddit, and I just get straight up downvoted. Edit. I appreciate everyone's comments, but it's been answered a good dozen times. Framerit was intentional. Got it. Honesty question. I haven't seen it yet, but when I see clips from it the frame rate looks low and kind of stuttering. Is that an artistic take? Yes, it's an intentional choice. The framerate kicks up significantly during action scenes. Yeah, it looks super cool in the movie. I was a bit hesitant from the trailers, but it looks stunning when seeing it as a whole. Also the soundtrack is on point. Hell yeah. This is the comment I needed. I forgot the villain's name that has the hood on, but the music that played every time he showed up was genuinely frightening to me. The whole soundtrack is just so well done. A few songs made for the film that are still in my rotation lol. Prowler. 100% agree. I don't think I could find a flaw in the film at all. I actually thought Spider Pig would ruin it, but somehow, it all fit in. It's really tough to strike such a harmonious balance between all these different characters, not to mention their unique accompanying art styles. They did a great job with it. Massive props to every creative mind that worked towards making this film a reality. Also the soundtrack is on point. Was reminded of this today. Actually, friggin' brilliant soundtrack, yo. Also the animation style changes from scene to scene, deliberately. I had to watch the movie several times to take it all in and fully appreciate it. There was the stuttery effect already mentioned, an old-fashioned newsprint effect with dots/pixels, or 3D without the glasses effect, a near photographic with reflections high-res effect and so much more. They worked really hard on that film and it showed. Third, without the glasses is chromatic aberration, right? Actually, the framerate goes up the more Miles learns how to use his powers. At least that's what they say in the audio commentary. Okay, that's fantastic. I'm going to have to watch the movie again to check. I think Miles is the only character with adjusted frame rates. It's most certainly an artistic choice to portray him as unsure/clumsy and getting more experienced over time. Another neat thing they did is when Peter is first teaching Miles how to swing, Miles is animated at a lower frame rate than Peter to give the feeling that Miles was very clunky/hesitant/still learning. I studied animation and was looking at all these artistic choices and loved them and looking for what they meant and why they did it that way. At first it looked smooth and then stuttering when Miles showed up. At first I thought the animation was done on TWS instead of on ones, meaning 12 frames per second instead of 24 frames per second, to look more like classic Western animation and to look like a comic book come to life. But as the movie progressed it became clear to me that most of the movie was on ones, but Miles was still on TWS. This was really easy to see in a scene where he's swinging with another Spider-Man, and the other Spider-Man's animation was much smoother since it was on ones. That's when I realized why they decided to do it that way. Miles is still learning the ropes and isn't confident. His movements aren't smooth, so neither is his animation. And sure enough, at the end of the movie there are a couple of scenes where he's animated on ones. PS. One of the many animators working on the movie was a classmate of mine when I studied animation. I was so proud of him and happy that I spotted his name in the credits. I didn't end up pursuing animation as a career. I'm in software engineering, but I'm very happy for my friends that found success in the field. That's correct. The director says that in the audio commentary. The frame rate on the main character is intentionally low. During action scenes the frame rate on everyone but him increases. At the end, when he gets his full Spider-Man powers, his frame rate is increased. Very intentional. Also fits the comic book feel, and then he feels so much more like a superhero when he gets his powers due to the smoother movements. Yeah, it's supposed to look like some sort of animated comic book. I think it's supposed to match the look of comic pages being turned. Think of those flip art books, where you flip through them to see the pictures move. It's an artistic choice that I like, because it makes it seem like the melding of comic and animation. They do it purposely, to show the main character is fitting in, and increase his frame rate. The frame rate also gets smoother as Miles gets better at being Spider-Man. Other people have already said yes, but I also want to chime in to say that Miles' frame rate is specifically animated slower than Peter's. As the movie goes on, and he finally sinks into being his own Spider-Man, his frame rate increases and matches everyone else's. Very cool little touch the animators added. It's on Netflix, and I couldn't recommend it more. I recently saw Spider-Verse, and had the same reservations. It's actually really good. Please watch the movie. I cannot recommend it enough, and I'm not even a superhero movies kind of a guy. I wondered this too. I thought it was just me. It's an intentional choice. At the beginning, Miles is animated at 12 FPS, while Peter is 24 FPS. At the end, when Miles comes into his own, he's also animated at 24 FPS. It's not something you really notice, but subconsciously you realize that Miles is different in the end than in the beginning, and it makes you feel that he's now come into his power. When you see it all put together, you'll get why those animation choices were made, and why they work. There's also the plot point, where the hero is animated at a clunkier frame rate than the other co-heroes. I'm saying heroes cause I don't wanna spoil it, but he gets smoother and smoother the more experienced he becomes. I had the same misgivings as you about the frame rate before I watched it, but it doesn't take long for your brain to adjust, and it's such a good movie. I like the frame rate was made intentionally low in the beginning for Miles Morales so show that he is unfamiliar with his powers and inexperienced. As the movie goes on his movement gradually becomes smoother. That movie was awesome and had something for everyone. Good to know Sony animation isn't all bad. The best Spider-Man movie along with Spider-Man 2, definitely. That's one of my favorite movies ever. So good. I love this movie, but it gives me a headache because of all the fast moving colors. You got a point. Came here to say this one as well. I wish I could watch it for the first time again. Hands down one of the best movies, period, animated otherwise. This took over my top spot from The Incredibles. It's such a phenomenal movie. I didn't like that as much as I thought I would. I think I'll give it another watch. It's all subjective at the end of the day, and I actually went into it without seeing reviews, so expectations were not so high. Hope your second viewing is an absolute delight. You guys know there's part 2 coming in 2022. If not for the virus, it would have come a year earlier. Yeah, very excited. Yes, this is my favorite movie of all time, and I'm so happy to see it get love. And I love the ending. There wasn't a forced kiss between Gwen and Miles, just a tiny little thumb rub, and she called him Spider-Man, even if it should have been Ultimate Spider-Man. Definitely. Too many films force a love interest, so was great to see how they handled it here. It made me wonder why the hell Marvel is wasting time on live action movies when Into the Spider-Verse looks a million times better than all of them combined.